And welcome to the Big Gunner Podcast. Well, another season in the books. 2025 playoff run is done, and the dreaded Philadelphia Eagles are the Super Bowl champs. Well, with a little help from the Big Blue, as we all know. Fantastic game. Philly showed up, put on an exhibition of football that we haven't seen that levels to a team like Kansas City probably in decades. It was as good a performance as we'll ever see. From listening to me, I'm a staunch guy about winning at the line of scrimmage, and it was sheer domination. And to my shock, and probably a lot of people's shock, that you have three interior Pro Bowlers on the Chiefs, and they were just manhandled. The great Trey Smith, who was probably the number one guard in free agency, just looked like he was out of place. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and crew just totally manhandled them. And I think when you're playing the quarterback position, I think what Mahomes was probably going through, and we did it in 2007 against Tom Brady, was you really don't like pressure up the middle. I know I've mentioned this before, that when Chris Snee retired, Eli Manning struggled with handling pressure, throwing a lot of high balls and interceptions and things like that, because you feel like your whole body and your future is your legs and knees and ankles. And I think that's really kind of what potentially goes on. Now, I'm sure Mahomes is not thinking that way during the course of a game, but it was very rare to see him look at pressure. While we watched the Jets with Aaron Rodgers look at pressure a lot. Daniel Jones completely struggled once Andrew Thomas was hurt. So I think when you, as a quarterback, start feeling that pressure and you're getting hit, and they had 6 sacks, I think these are all the things that kind of led into the Chiefs' demise in that football game. For the most part, I thought the Chiefs' defense really didn't play that bad. They were tackling Barkley. I think he had 23 carries for 57 yards. So I really believe that they did a really good they did a really good job when it came down to controlling him, and I think that was part of the game plan, and did it well. But the corners were a little outmatched against Philly's receivers. Hurts broke down a few plays, and when the pressure was there and no one was open, and ran to get 11 catches for 70 yards, a well-deserved MVP. Everybody's making a stink about how he's outplayed Mahomes twice. I would say he outplayed Mahomes because of the rest of the team, not just the reason why Patrick played bad wasn't Patrick. I think he'll put the burden on himself, saying that he's the guy responsible for the loss. But to me, it was the fact that they really didn't stop Philly's offense, and then, of course, the mistake to DeJean, the interception, probably was the end of the game for me. But I thought the real big turning point is, and I wonder when these coaches are going to stop this, but you're watching the game, and I'm a feel guy when I watch a game, when I handicap a game, and when you live bet these games, it's kind of like what you feel. And there's a big risk to that because, of course, I could be wrong. But I'm sitting there with my son-in-law, and we're talking about the game, and I said, it's 17-0. Kansas City just got to stop. They've been completely dominated. Is it a rush offensively? Because that whole Belichick adage, you get the last possession of the first half and the first possession of the second half. Oh, we want to double up. We can make it a 17-14 game. I was thinking, if you get out of this half 17-0, because you got to go 91 yards or get in field goal range to make it 17-3. And then if you get the fact that you're putting it at risk that if you get that first drive and score and you're at 17-7, 5 minutes into the third quarter, your 2-possession game, you're in it. You can't make a mistake. And sure enough, Joe Tooney gets backed up. Sweat puts on a great power rush. It backs Joe Tooney up into Mahomes' legs, and there's the interception that he throws over the middle. And I looked at him and I said, this is what I talk about. And I think coaches, and again, I'm not going to fault any coach for this, especially Andy Reid, who might challenge anything the guy does. But I just feel like when you're that good all the time, you feel no risk. And you could see the game was getting away from them. The DeJean pick was brutal. And taking it for the touchdown, I thought that was the game there. But then as soon as they threw the interception to Bond, I thought that was it. And it turned out 24-0, and never really got it under 18 till the very end of the game. The game was basically over. Second half, I kind of liked Philly in the second half, and told a couple friends of mine I think that's the play, and lucky to get it. I mean, if you go back and look at the second half line of plus 255 Philly in the money line, which I hesitated to take, but wanted to, I was thanking God because, again, these coaches, they don't punt with a minute and 50 to go and turn the ball over, and he hits a deep shot to Xavier Worthy. I was on with Bury Your Bookie with Defoe and gave out the Xavier Worthy prop. I also gave it to a couple of friends that told me to go over 100 yards, and it looked bleak at halftime. At halftime, I liked Kansas City in the game. One of the only guys on the Bury Your Bookie that did, so I'll take my wound for that. I just thought that it would, when looking at the game, I just thought the line was right, and Mahomes was 7 for 7 in these spots. Why not? Why break away from a trend that's working until you see it happen? And but you could see pretty much early on in the game. I was listening to ESPN Bet, and the guys were saying how you might want to take Kansas City after the first score because you get the line, and the line came out at 3, down 7-0, and you waited, and it was 4.5 out there, and you thought about taking that. But then once you saw, 10-0, and then you see 17-0, you just saw how they were struggling to move the ball, and they were getting dominated. And they basically didn't run the football. And I thought that last series before the half, when it was still a game, I thought they should have ran it once, maybe try to pop a run and then make a decision on what you want to do. And then sure enough, he throws that pick, and then they get the touchdown, and it's 24-0, and basically game over. But my thoughts about the whole run for Philly this year was, Sirianni gets in crisis, and during the Cleveland game early on in the year where he's yelling at fans, and is this the right move? But in the meantime, you're watching Saquon Barkley, and you're just saying, what little glue we had as a franchise was held together in a losing locker room by what coaches now establish, especially down here with the Miami Heat, is this culture that you want to have, a positive locker room. Not that the players get along, but they have the vision of one job and one destination, which is to win. And I think that there is something to be said to that when you get at this day and age with NIL and sports and the players the way they are, you want to get into a situation where your locker room has a foundation of, solidarity. And, when I was there in '84, the Giants, and I could see it, the only way you were going to get to that point is winning. And we got off to a good start. And Philly didn't get off to a good start, but they started to roll pretty much down toward the season. And you saw the Barkley, parts. You saw that when we played him, and Barkley had 175 yards and broke his rushing record for a game in Giant Stadium. He didn't really want more at the end of the game, let everybody else play, thinking what the big picture was and getting to that part. And then you get to the guy who I think is responsible for the demise of the Giants and the success of the Eagles, and Howie Roseman. And they were going through a transition period where people weren't happy with Roseman, his draft picks, the Wentz thing, and then, Hurts. Some people weren't even happy with Hurts. And then I go back to the culture, and I think of, wow, Jalen Hurts, what did he do at Alabama but win the title and get taken out in the biggest game of his life, and it was the first one to greet Tua when he won the game. And I always remember that as a high character moment with a young player who sees the big picture about the team. And I think when you bring a Barkley in, and Barkley is about the team, and he's quiet, and he does it on the field, and he's a tremendous athlete, and you get him healthy, as that Philly did all year, which we struggled protecting him because our line play was so below average, that you just look at that and say, this is really the moments when you get that team to the next level. And when you bring a player like that, who's a great locker room guy, high character young man, and blend him in with a great offensive line and a decent quarterback and great wide receivers and a defense that they got to play this year, unlike last year where they were ranked, almost dead last. They tackled better. They got the motivation. I think that's what creates the whole lay it on the line way of playing today that existed a little bit more a long time ago. But today, because of all the distraction and so many different things, what you could do with your life, that the culture in the locker room, I think, is important. And I think that's what the Giants have to attack next year. I think that's what the coaches have to do. There's more than just X's and O's. These guys all know it. They're sharper getting into the league, than they've ever been. 7-on-7 drills, kids play flag earlier on. The tackling is probably the one thing that the fundamental that's a little bit weak as we go to today's game is, you could hardly practice it. So, you can just see this is the issues I think facing the Giants. But I believe that Philly solved their culture with Barkley, and I think that was as big a part of the win as his athleticism or anything he did was getting that locker room to come together. But Howie Roseman, what he's accomplished is, remember, he got the job in Philly in 2010, and who was he looking up to? The Giants had been the last team to win a Super Bowl. We had been pretty good at that point. I don't know if years either way, but we'd been pretty good. And I think he was probably looking at fighting off Dallas, wasn't really worried about Washington, the Giants. And then 2011, the second year, we win from a wild card and win a great Super Bowl, have another Super Bowl win against New England. And he's looking at us as the team that he has to attack. And there you go. And now he's done it. And he did it when he picked trade up to pick Devontae Smith in front of us. Well, I don't know if he traded up in that round. I'd have to check that. But I knew he picked Devontae Smith right in front of us, which may force us to trade out under Dave Gettleman. And, we just saw last week Micah Parsons come out and say he thought he was going to be a Giant. And now he's got a bone to pick with us every time he gets on the field, which seems he's pretty good at it. This is a major disruptor. And then you look at that and see, we could add Micah Parsons, which I've, reiterated on this show numerous times, how the Giants missed by trading out and trading that pick, which everybody loved because they got more picks. They got Kadarius Toney. But when you look at it, that extra number one turned into Evan Neal and what happened there. So, just when you're looking at what we've done, some of the things we've made in trades, and this is how you look back at things and see how they don't work out. So, to me, I look at this and say, okay, here's what we got. We need a quarterback. We got to fight off the Eagles now. The gap after our free agents time last year, and I was worried after Barkley went to Philly. I vented on the show how upset I was that he mad at him that he chose Philly. But in hindsight, after watching the show, I would say, and the show being Hard Knocks with the Giants last year, offseason with the Giants, I was kind of irritated with Joe Shane for not giving the kid an offer. I've said it numerous times. Again, we're rehashing old news, which we're going to move forward, as we prepare for this draft and free agency. But this is it. This is it. And I'm going to, for this coaching staff and front office. So here's my little tidbit, not that anybody should ever listen to me, but, we're going to throw our vibe out there. We were kind of right on Jaden Daniels being the best quarterback in draft so far. I would say that was right. That was the player I wanted, and Dable said so. But I'm going to look at this and say, okay, how do we attack Philadelphia? Well, we're going to need guys up front, both sides of the ball. We got to find a way to block Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and their edges. We're going to have to find a way to muscle up, and we have part of that with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence, but we're going to need another player. And then we're going to have to address the quarterback. And the fascinating parts of the NFL room as a quarterback now in the last few days is, number one, there's interest in Russell Wilson. Do I really want him as the answer? No, not really. But I think having a Super Bowl champion quarterback in our locker room will help as far as leadership. Now, he wasn't that great leader, they say, in Denver. But I think, now maybe with his mistakes and maybe what happened in Pittsburgh, playing well, getting him to the playoffs, maybe he comes in here, let it go with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove that he can still play. And I think the next thing is the Matthew Stafford problem, which I find interesting. So we hire his brother-in-law as a assistant coach, and are we interested in doing this? And here's where I think of why one of these things will happen immediately, where we're going to bring in a guy to start the season. I think a prominent quarterback, either through trade, free agency, a guy with veteran experience, and Stafford and Wilson both have won Super Bowls, is this coaching staff's on the block. They can't sit. I don't know if we have the time with our schedule next year to sit back and watch a development of a quarterback. If this team goes 3-14 and the quarterback is okay, but we're just losing short games and we're playing a tough schedule. Kansas City beats us by 3 and the Chargers beat us by 2 and we competitive against Eagles. Yeah, well and good, but it's not going to let this coaching staff say. They need win results. We need to see improvement, a future, and probably 7 or 8 wins minimum for the staff to stay around. And that's where the $60 million comes in and the coaching. And I do have confidence in Brian Dable even more so than I have confidence that Joe Shane will put the right players on the field for him. But I go back to the Bill Parcells era and say, okay, Brian Dable, this is going to do this your way. Like, you make the decisions who you want to play. You don't listen to anybody. You say if you're going down with the ship, it's going to be on my decisions. I think in your fourth year now, I'm happy you got the year. I think it's time that you show the Belichick Saban roots that you come about and say, okay, this is what I think we need to do to win. I think you're an impressive coach. I think you would fall back on your feet no matter what happens. Definitely as a coordinator for sure. I don't know about a head coaching job after this for a couple of years, but and you're young enough to go. But I think you gotta lay it on the line your way, get it done. I got confidence in you that you can pull this off as a longtime fan and former employee. So I'm all in. But the attack has got to be on the Eagles. That is the team we have to go after. So that means to me, if we're at 3 and you don't think it's the guy, is Mason Graham the guy from Michigan, the best defensive tackle in this draft? If Abdul Carter's there, do we go in an edge and try to compete against Philly's offensive line? Or do we figure something out and maybe work out a deal that someone wants a quarterback at 3 and we go down and we draft an offensive lineman that might solidify our line or draft a corner? But this team, as we're looking at it to compete against Philly, needs players, more than one. I'm happy that we have nine selections in this draft, and I'm thrilled we got $60 million in free agency. And I think that's really where the attack goes moving forward. On this, where we go. But the job that Howie Roseman and the Eagles have done, I've always been a fan of his work. The Eagles are my nemesis. Like, if I had to look back, I'm not so worried about the Cowboys, even though they dominate us. It used to be the Cowboys all the time, but since I would say, the Eagles gave us a break when we recovered the fumble in '78 and changed our franchise for the better. So I always thank Herman Edwards. Whenever I see him on TV, there's actually a smile now from that painful day when I was with a friend of mine and almost assaulted his little brother when he started making fun of me, and at a young age of 13 years old. And then I get into this future of where we are, and then the Deshaun Watson punt return and Philly knocking us out of the playoffs twice, and then the games that have happened in the past. And it's just, Philly's been my team that I think you get ready for every day, even more so than Dallas. But those two teams did, and now we're going to deal with Washington. So if you really look at this, we're right now considerably in the cellar in our division, and this is where we got to attack. So no more letting free agents go to teams in our division if they're players. If you do that, pay the extra money, keep them in-house. I would like to see that this particular draft class in 2024, we find ways after they're gone to keep them. There's no one really I don't like. There's no one there that I think is not worthy of a roster spot and a position in this franchise. So I love the draft last year, and I think when John Mara interviewed at the end of the season, he used that as a stepping stone to keeping Joe Shane, and I agree with it. So I think the scouts and all the people that drafted, that made the advisors, and gave the information up to the top, did a good job. And that's where it's got to start. Very weak draft for 2023. So-so in 2022, not sure yet. But the 2024 so far look good. So if we can have another draft like that, a good free agent class, the sky's the limit for what we're doing, or at least we'll be better than 3 wins. Looking forward, I think that's the approach. The quarterback may be a free agent, drafting a Jackson Dart if he's around the second round or someone like that, even getting a second quarterback, as I said before, later, and then attacking the line of scrimmage on both sides, getting our offensive line to be better. Although I think it showed an upgrade, but again, the numbers that you look at online from people that are smarter than me at this didn't really say the Giants graded out all that well, and so, maybe because we didn't have a back, but just watching what this guy did in Philadelphia was just remarkable. That's the player that we drafted. It was very similar to his rookie year, busting long runs, setting records, and I think he broke the all-time rushing record, but he played in more games. But I think that record's in jeopardy with a healthy team next year for Philly again. So now let's take it over to the picks. Yesterday on Bury Your Bookie, we were 2-0. The Hawks, we get an outright win, plus 5.5, and then we thought Clemson was a pretty big after the big win against Duke on Saturday. We thought Clemson would be a bet, and they were. And tonight I got 2 more, 2 underdogs. So looking around the NBA, there's only 4 games, and it's tough to really find, but I'm very enamored with what's going on in Philadelphia. I'm kind of like, my mind's going here. Like, okay, so we got the Toronto Raptors getting 9, who played a little bit better basketball, had a chance to beat Houston at a bad fourth quarter, going in and getting 9 from Philadelphia. You have Embiid is questionable. Paul George should play. Uh, Tyrone Maxey is obviously a stud that they have. I think Eric Gordon's questionable. Kyle Lowry's out. Not two big bench players that they have, which Philly can work around. My thought is I'm going to take the 9 with Toronto because they're playing better. And thinking that now, if Joel Embiid is now needing surgery, and it was out this morning that they're not sure he's questionable to play, why was Philly be forcing a hurt player on the field or on the court at this particular time, knowing they're probably not going anywhere? Yeah, if they sneak in, they're 20 and 32. If they sneak in, maybe they could do some damage if the guy's healthy. But if this guy is stating that he might need off-season surgery again, and the question is, what does Philly trade him, and what the status is, and how much of a mess it is? Where's the mental state in that culture in that locker room where Paul George goes to make a trade to get the Philly to think he's going to win the East, and now the main cog in that arsenal of players of Philly is the best player on the team is Joel Embiid, who's a complete mismatch. No big can guard him. He can take it on the perimeter. He's just a phenomenal player. But if he's not right and the team's not right mentally, I'm going to take my chances tonight and take Toronto plus the 9 on a flyer that they can keep it close and maybe steal a game. And then in college basketball, I'm sorry, they're doing all right. We got a few winners this weekend at Clemson last night. It's an intriguing game in Champaign tonight where Illinois is playing UCLA. UCLA winners of 7 in a row, but now this is the first road game where they go into a few different time zones. I think the line's kind of high. Illinois 16 and 8 ranked because of their talent. I think Mick Cronin got his message across a few weeks ago when he started telling about how these kids are spoiled and that they're getting paid and that they want to listen and all that. Maybe he's going to get them to rally. I'm going to take an outside shot and take UCLA plus the 6.5, saying they're playing well, and and that they will, they will get a cover against Illinois and Champaign tonight. So the two games, Toronto and plus 9, and UCLA plus the 6.5. And then in final, if I may, thanking No Filter TV for bringing me on. I'd just like to, thank Defo personally for, here for taking me on the shows. It's been a great little run. We had a lot of fun this year. Sad to see football go. That is my main sport as far as having fun handicapping. And I think when you get to the playoffs, we lost. So we were 9-4-1 in the playoffs this year after 10-3 last year. I think as my point as we do this is the playoffs are easier, I think, to handicap because of the focus on the individual game. They're much more polarizing. Information comes a bit more frequently and more often, and there's a lot more of it today to help the handicapper when we get to the playoffs. I think this was a rough year for the bookies from what I understand. We had that run the last 3 weeks of the year where the favorites, outright winners, were 40 wins and 8 losses in the last stage, which is a highly rare number. A lot of complaints. I think the numbers will show. But as we move forward, the NCAA basketball tournament is a fun, to my opinion, it's the greatest 3 weeks of sports of the year to just have the first weekend. In the 90s when I was out going to Vegas and it wasn't as popular as it was there, I couldn't believe that this wasn't a big deal. And then all of a sudden it became a big deal. And, and people started showing up for that first week and you had the games. And back then they were not as staggered as they are now. I think they do a great job moving these games where pretty much only in the first day 2 or 3 are on at the same time. I think very rarely do you get 4 games at once. I think now it's even on Saturday and Sunday where that might fall into place of the first week. I said, and then every game, 2 games at a time on Thursday and Friday in the second week, and then the regional championship games, on Saturday and Sunday, and it gets to the Final Four, which is always a great event. But yeah, so we're going to dip into that. We try to, you slow down with the plays, now because of the fact that you're trying to gear into the conference championship tournaments and then the real tournament when the games are around the clock, and it's just probably the best time. I think conference championship, we really think when every team's playing is really the best time, and then you lead into the tournament, which is just fantastic. And then you get into baseball, and then we have a nice little baseball season in the middle, and then in July we're right back at it with training camps opening, and we're handicapping the draft for the Giants, and we're doing the free agency, which should be a lot of fun. and we'll get to it. But ending this with the New York Giants, my last comments are 3-14 is an embarrassing season. I think the coaching staff, and I said the GM, their jobs are on the line. No ifs, ands, or buts. They have to see remarkable improvement. I don't think Mara will take it. This front office, upper management is getting crucified by the young podcast media and the media itself. Everybody's out there making a brand. We follow most of them. I respect a few of them. Some of them I don't. I think they're just out to make shock noise and stuff. But I like to listen to them and see what's out there, and maybe we'll start making some comments over things that we hear, whether we agree or disagree. But I think that the draft is going to be indicative of where they got to go. What do we do to attack the quarterback position? Which I honestly believe what we saw the other night, as much as Jalen Hurts was terrific, that game was won by the other players, not just Jalen Hurts. I think he was a compliment and had the best numbers. And since we're a quarterback-driven league now, I think that's really what we see in the game. And I think Pat Mahomes is getting too much of the blame. The big thing I'd like to talk about with him real quick as I finish is, everybody's out there. I took Ryan Clark, who I think is out there developing a brand. Not so much. I loved him when he was just starting off making these great points all the time, but I thought he made one really good on Monday on First Take when he said, that we can't count out Pat Mahomes for what he's accomplished. Unbelievable what he's done. And I think that, I'm not going to look at one game where he was getting his ass kicked as being indicative on what the guy is as a player. And I think, will he have to come back up? But and win a game, win another Super Bowl, keep staying and make deep playoff runs. Yeah, probably to be in the challenge of Tom Brady. But for my eye test, he's the best I've ever seen play the position. You got free agency now, new players coming in and out. I think Kansas City's defense is great. I think the more they won, getting to the third Super Bowl, the defense got their just due. But this kid is really some player, and I think he'll be back. And a high character kid, again, a good guy you want to have in your locker room. So till next week, Big Gunner says, let's go blue. And we'll try to get you some more winners, and we'll see you Thursday on Bury Your Bookie.